It was just after 2 o'clock on a cold December afternoon in 1910. Fifth Avenue was alive with holiday shoppers. Horse-drawn carriages rattled down the street, women in fine hats darted in and out of shops, and the city buzzed with the promise of Christmas. Among them was Dorothy Arnold, an heiress, a Bryn Mawr graduate, and an aspiring writer. She stopped into a bookstore, bought a light-hearted novel, and laughed with a friend she bumped into on the sidewalk. 2 minutes later, she was gone. Not kidnapped in an alley, not swept away by scandal. She simply vanished, without a sound, without a witness, on one of the busiest streets in New York City. This is the story of Dorothy Harriet Camille Arnold, the young woman who disappeared in broad daylight and was never seen again. Dorothy Arnold was not your average young woman. Born in 1885, she grew up surrounded by wealth and privilege. Her father, Francis Arnold, was a successful perfume and goods importer. Her mother, Mary, belonged to a proud, old-money family. Together, they maintained a townhouse on East 79th Street, just off Park Avenue, where every detail, from the servants to the fine china, spoke of status. Dorothy was the second of 4 children. She had attended Bryn Mawr College, graduating in 1905, and was well-educated, stylish, and well-connected. She had the means to live a life of leisure, attending teas, balls, and society functions, but Dorothy had something else in mind. She wanted to be a writer. She sent her short stories to magazines like Harper's and McClure's. She waited eagerly for letters of acceptance, but they never came. Editors rejected her stories, and each rejection chipped away at her confidence. To friends, she sometimes laughed it off, but those close to her said Dorothy was quietly devastated. She longed for independence, in a world where women of her station were expected to marry well and behave properly. Dorothy wanted more than a pretty dress and a society husband, and in 1910, that desire was dangerous. December 12th, 1910 began like any other. Dorothy told her mother she was going shopping for a gown. Her younger sister Marjorie's debutante ball was only weeks away. At around 11 a.m., she left the family home with about $25 to $30 in her purse. That's nearly $800 in today's money. Plenty to spend on chocolates, books, or dresses. Her first stop was Park and Tilford, an upscale confectionery on Fifth Avenue at 59th Street. She bought a half-pound box of chocolates, charging it to her family's account. From there, she walked downtown, 32 blocks, through the busy holiday streets. Around 2 p.m., Dorothy entered Brentano's, a famous bookstore at 5th Avenue and 27th Street. She purchased a book called Engaged Girl Sketches, a humorous collection about young women preparing for marriage. As she stepped back onto the sidewalk, she ran into a friend, Francis Arnold, who happened to share her last name but was no relation. The two women chatted for several minutes. Francis later recalled Dorothy looking perfectly well, cheerful even. She held her bag of chocolates, her new book, and seemed in good spirits. Then Dorothy turned and walked south down 5th Avenue. That was the last time anyone ever saw her. When Dorothy didn't return home that night, her family grew alarmed. But they did not call the police. In early 20th century high society, scandal was often considered worse than tragedy. The Arnolds feared the humiliation of seeing their daughter's name in the papers, tangled up in gossip, so they turned instead to family attorney John Keith and the Pinkerton Detective Agency. When Keith searched Dorothy's room, he noticed a few odd details. Letters with foreign postmarks sat on her desk. 2 folders for transatlantic steamships were tucked away. In the fireplace, scraps of burned paper suggested she'd destroyed something before leaving, but her clothing, jewelry, and personal items were untouched. Dorothy hadn't packed a suitcase or taken money from the bank. She had simply walked out with her chocolates and her book and never returned. The family quietly scoured hospitals, morgues, and even jails. They searched Central Park. They questioned friends, but they kept it all private. For weeks, her name never appeared in print. Finally, on January 25th, 1911, 6 weeks after she vanished, Dorothy's father, Francis, called a press conference. He admitted his daughter was missing and offered a $1,000 reward for information. Reporters pounced on the story. Headlines screamed, "Heiress vanishes from Fifth Avenue." Instead of sympathy, the Arnolds were met with suspicion. Why had they waited so long? What were they hiding? The secrecy backfired. The press and the public smelled scandal. There was one part of Dorothy's life her parents wanted hidden. His name was George Griscom Jr., a wealthy Pittsburgh engineer. Dorothy had met him through her social circle, and the two fell deeply in love. But the Arnolds disapproved. They said George was unsuitable, lazy, and unworthy of their daughter. Dorothy didn't care. She continued the relationship in secret. In September of 1910, just 3 months before she vanished, she told her parents she was visiting friends in Boston. In reality, she spent a week with George in a hotel. To pay for the trip, she pawned more than $500 worth of her jewelry. When her parents discovered the lie, they were furious. Still, the romance continued through letters, and when Dorothy disappeared, George was in Florence, Italy. The Arnolds sent him frantic cables. He denied knowing anything. On January 16th, Dorothy's mother and brother traveled across the Atlantic to confront him face to face. George handed over a packet of Dorothy's letters. Her brother John read them, declared them unimportant, and then destroyed them. The contents of those letters remain a mystery. Were they harmless notes of affection? Or did they contain Dorothy's true plans? George insisted he loved Dorothy. He said he wanted to marry her, but only if her mother approved. Mary Arnold refused. Their conversation ended there. The family returned to New York, the mystery unsolved, and Dorothy's letters lost forever. By now, the press was ravenous. Dorothy's disappearance was front-page news across the country. Every new rumor, every false lead became a headline. There were supposed sightings in Philadelphia, Boston, and even as far as California. Letters arrived demanding ransom, but none were credible. Reporters painted Dorothy as everything from a secret romantic to a tragic young writer. They debated whether she had eloped, taken her own life, or met foul play. Some even accused the Arnolds themselves of hiding the truth. For weeks, her story sold papers, and the more the family insisted on their dignity, the more the public doubted them. Over time, several theories emerged. None have ever been proven, but each sheds light on Dorothy's mysterious fate. The first theory is that she had an illegal abortion. At the time, abortion was illegal and extremely dangerous. Rumors spread that Dorothy had become pregnant, possibly by George Griscom, and sought help from a clandestine clinic. One doctor even claimed a young woman resembling Dorothy had died on his table and her body disposed of secretly. But no records were ever produced, and the stories were based largely on hearsay. Still, this theory remains one of the most widely believed. The second theory was that she took her own life. Dorothy's repeated rejections as a writer, combined with her family's disapproval of George, may have left her feeling trapped. Some believe she slipped into Central Park or the icy East River to take her own life, but no body was ever recovered, and even in winter, it's unusual that no trace was found. Theory 3 was that she may have escaped and eloped. Those steamship folders and foreign letters on her desk suggest Dorothy dreamed of escaping abroad. Did she intend to run away? Perhaps to join George in Italy? The problem is money. She had only $25 to $30 on her. If she planned to sail away, there's no evidence of a ticket purchased under her name, and no confirmed sightings overseas. The fourth theory is that she was abducted. Could Dorothy have been kidnapped in broad daylight on Fifth Avenue? It sounds impossible. The sidewalks were bustling with shoppers. Surely someone would have seen a struggle, and no ransom demand ever surfaced that held water. Still, it can't be ruled out. And the fifth and final theory was that it was a family cover-up. Some suspect the Arnolds knew more than they admitted. The destroyed letters, the delay in going public, the obsession with reputation, all of it fueled speculation that Dorothy's family might have silenced embarrassing truths. Whether that was an affair, a pregnancy, or a scandal they couldn't bear to face, we may never know. Here's what we know. Dorothy left home at 11 a.m. on December 12, 1910. She bought chocolates. She bought a book. She chatted with a friend outside Brentano's at 2 p.m. After that, her trail ends. Here's what we don't know. What she planned to do after leaving the bookstore. What was written in the letters her brother destroyed. Whether she intended to run away or whether she met with tragedy that same day. The truth was buried with Dorothy. Her body was never found. No verified sighting was ever confirmed. Eventually, she was declared legally dead, but the case has never been solved. Dorothy Arnold's disappearance isn't just an unsolved mystery. It's a mirror into her time. A young woman in 1910 had very little control over her own destiny. Society dictated she marry well, behave modestly, and never bring shame to her family. Dorothy wanted something else. She wanted to write, to love freely, to carve her own path. That dream may have made her vulnerable to despair, to danger, or to the shadows of scandal that society was determined to hide. More than a century has passed since Dorothy Arnold walked out of Brentano's bookstore and vanished into history. Did she die in a secret clinic? Did she take her own life in the park? Did she run away, never to look back? Or was she silenced by those closest to her? In a city that never sleeps, Dorothy's story remains frozen in time, an open question that may never be answered. This has been Twisted History. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this story, please rate, review, and share the podcast. And join me next time as we uncover another strange and unsettling mystery from the past.